Hello, I hope you are warm and cozy. As I'm speaking to you, it is Tuesday morning in the frigid cold. I'm looking out my window, actually my mother's window because I take care of her, looking out her window and I see about 6 inches of snow on the table outside. I hope you are bundled up and you have hot chocolate and a banky and warm fuzzy slippers and you're ready to cozy up to the computer. So stay safe, y'all. Um, this week you are finishing up your personal essay. I've enjoyed looking at your drafts. Heads up, I have been giving just general, like quick takes on some of your drafts. If you've met with me for a conference, I've given you certainly much more detailed feedback and extra credit points. Now, if you're wondering, well, how did I get into that sweet, sweet extra credit point thing for meeting with Trish? Well, you still can do that. Um, Check out the Calendly links to conference times with me, and you can get up to 10 points extra credit. Now, if you just want general overall, my first take on your essay, go check your email. Um, I've done this for people for whom I have not yet conferenced. These are just quick takes, not deep edits, not this is what you should do next kind of things. They're just reactions. So if you want to look at that, go check your email. You have until Wednesday at midnight, that's tomorrow, to finish your drafts. If you want my feedback before then, sign up. Um, but we're beginning our new unit, which is our literary journalism unit. And it is my favorite, but I hope it's also yours. It is your opportunity to mix storytelling, which you've been practicing for the last two essays, with reportage, which means reporting. That's a fancy way of saying finding some facts. So it is a combo genre. You go out in the world, you research, but you also experience. You interview, you observe. So you're mixing in all of the skills that you've been practicing, like dialogue, setting, scene. Um, you can characterize, but you're also doing research. It two in one. It's magical. Um, and it takes some time and some effort, so you have to decide what you want to do. Now, if this were a normal semester, I would encourage you to go out and try something new, something you've never done before, and report back. That's called immersion journalism. Um, Heads up, we're in a pandemic, and it would be ethically unsound to say, hey, go try out for a play, or go try a thing you've never done before in the world with other humans where they can breathe on you. I can't do that. That's not okay, and neither can you. So we're going to adjust our assignment to be COVID safe, but still a journalistic experience because heads up, you are living in new times. Nobody in um, alive today has lived through a pandemic to this extent and tried to navigate it. So you have unique opportunities to tell unique stories about the world we live in. So we'll go over the prompt in just a minute. Uh, these are the outcomes, as you know. Here are the major readings for this assignment. This is super important. If you don't read this, you're going to get really confused. So please read what is literary journalism. It kind of explains the genre. I just gave you a quick overview, but it explains the genre. And in Slant, you have information about glorious facts, about how to seek information, primary sources. You are a journalist, so you're doing primary research as well as secondary research. Primary research is you go and get the facts yourself through experiential observation, by participating, by telling your own story, by doing interviews. So it's hands-on, go get the stuff. But you also are going to inform your readers with actual factual data that you get from actual factual reliable sources in the world. You've done research before, you've done informational reports, you've done argumentative reports, you've done information, you found information in the past. We're going to do that again, but in a less stiff and scholarly way. It's going to be more engaging for your readers because you're doing storytelling too. There are some great readings that I would, if we had all the time in the world and if you had all the energy in the world, I would love for you to read. Among them is this beautiful piece by David Foster Wallace called Shipping Out. If you only read the first 5 pages, you would get a sense of his style and his voice. He's a character on the page, and that is something that we as journalists get to do. Um, Normally in journalism, you don't get to be a character, but in literary journalism, you do. And you can have a mood and a tone and a voice just as you do in a personal essay. See how these things are dovetailing? The personal essay is giving that groundwork for all that work, and then you're adding the research. It's going to work together. All right. I've got some stuff about personal interviews and so on. Okay. Here is your assignment link for the essay. Your journal, before we go back to the literary journalism stuff, your journal this week is to reflect on your personal narrative. Give me a little feedback about what worked, what didn't work, what's confusing, what you're proud of. I'm going to read your journal before I read your essay to see what you think about it and what you would like me to notice. You'll read the prompt. It'll be fine. Please try to do that as soon as you can. Okay, here's the overview of literary journalism and how it differs from traditional straight news journalism. Now, what we see today in journalism is actually pretty loaded and polarized, unfortunately. But in traditional straight Walter Cronkite type journalism, we have objective reportage. That means that the journalist, the person doing the reporting, does not get to put their spin on it, does not get to have their voice or their opinion or their experience as part of the story. They are the camera, they are the distant observer and invisible. Very different from literary journalism where you are a character. So just to give you a notion of what straight news journalism is all about, it's about timeliness. It's happening right now. So for example, the weather that is happening right now is a big dang deal because it's happening now. It has impact, right? It's going to affect our travel. It's going to affect our heating and cooling. It might affect our power lines, and God forbid our Wi-Fi. So it has impact. It's happening right here and right now. Proximity is affecting us. This is important to us. As I said, impartiality is the objective reporter's voice. Prominence, if this affected, say, Kim Kardashian happened to be in Albuquerque and got stuck in traffic, we would care about that sort of. I mean, maybe some people do, but because of the prominence of the people involved. Those things affect what makes things newsworthy. And in impartial reporting, the most important facts come first, and then we kind of narrow down to the least important. The notion being that if an editor had to cut for space, they could lop off the end of the story and we'd still get the most important facts. It's not meant to be artful, it's meant to be informative, and it's just get the facts to the reader in the most efficient way possible. That's very different from literary journalism. And this chart kind of gives you an overview. In traditional straight news, the timeliness of it is important. Yesterday's news is today's lining of the birdcage. It's not really useful. It passes quickly. It's just out the door and we don't care. But literary journalism is what we call evergreen. The stories are factually based. Yes, indeed, those facts can be meaningful in the moment, but they also have a timelessness. We can read David Foster Wallace's essay, get something out of it 20 years after it was published, and still feel like we're getting a fresh, interesting story. Again, traditional journalism, proximity matters because we care about what's happening in our neighborhood, in our city, our state, and in our country before we care about what's happening in France. Well, maybe we care what's happening in France, but not to the same degree. In literary journalism, location is about setting and scene, not so much news. So the setting and scene can happen in your living room and still be pertinent to the storytelling, which is why it's important in the age of COVID. Prominence, as I said, Kim Kardashian in a snow-related traffic jam might matter, but in straight news, in literary journalism, the characters matter. So anybody can be a piece of your story. Your next door neighbor, your mom, your dog, can be a character in this particular report as long as we care about them, and you've learned about this by characterizing players in your personal essay. As long as we care about them, we're good to go. And so you're going to do some characterizing. Man on the street, woman on the street, kid on the street, those are all valid characters, people, sources in your piece. As I've said, impartiality as the reporter is invisible in literary journalism. Even though you strive for balance, you are here still to inform. You're not here to persuade, you're not creating an argument, you're not taking a political position, you are just informing, but you can do so in a colorful way with you as a participant or an observer, and you are part of the story. Again, in journalism, straight journalism, facts are presented in the order of importance, and facts inform the story, but the story is the most important thing in literary journalism. Please read this. Again, I posted it big and loud because I want you to see it. Here is a little bit about performing a successful interview. You will be interviewing at least one other person. An interview is a conversation. I used to do this as a feature journalist. I was a freelance journalist for years. And the best way I thought to strike up a conversation is just to do what you would do normally, strike up a conversation. You're going to ask a combination of closed and open-ended questions. Example, closed-ended question. What is your name? How do you spell it? How long have you been in this position at your job? What is your title? Those are closed-ended questions. There's only one answer. You're going to have to get those right, so make sure you ask those pertinent closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions lead to anecdote stories, open philosophical, waxing poetic, I don't know, just open-ended leads to something new. So for example, what's the craziest thing that's happened at the job today? Or what do you really love about this particular thing? Or what is the hardest thing about working at home? Or what did you learn about yourself through this stretch of homeschooling your kids? Those things will lead to stories. You don't know what the answers are going to be. And then as they respond, you're going to see that more ideas come forward. You're going to say, really, tell me more about that. And then the story starts to take legs. You have something really interesting to work with. So you're going to practice that a little bit this week. Your blog this week is we're going to start with the literary journalism prompt. The first possible approach is, the topic is socializing in social isolation. We've got some readings to look at that give you some models of how others have approached this sort of thing. And the reason I'm going through this quickly is I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to post a second video about the prompt itself in just a minute. But please read these sample readings about how people have navigated the crazy world of socializing and social distance. And then I want you to practice thinking about being both the experiential storyteller and the reporter. And I also want you to practice an open-ended question for your classmates. So how are you using technology to entertain yourself or connect with others in a creative way? Tell a brief story from your own experience. Characterize yourself as a narrator. So here we are practicing that storytelling experientially. And what do you think people need to know about socializing at a social distance? What types of sources would you go to if you were to research this project? You're not obligated to research in this topic because I'm going to show you other topics in a moment. But I do want you to think about what would you do? And then the third thing is to ask one open-ended question of your classmates to further the discussion about the literary journalism assignment. Now, you're going to read the literary journalism assignment. You may see other topics and other readings that you think might be really interesting. So maybe ask a question like, which one are you going to go for? Or if you were to take on this topic, what would you do? Or how do you heal yourself through nature? Those kinds of things that might lead to some sort of storytelling response. You want to think about how to get your subject to give you quotable material, something that's interesting, something that you care about and they care about and your readers will care about. So these are ways to practice. I am 10 seconds away from losing my recording privileges here, so I'm going to stop this recording and make a new one about the prompt itself. I hope you really have fun with this assignment. You're going to have to dive in. That's what we do as immersion journalists, and get to it because it takes some time. But have fun with this.